I have had the most amazing interview with Jane Grech today. She is an absolute leader in the dance studio industry space, also in the dance space in general. She's very passionate about engaging, motivating, and inspiring others to lead significant and fulfilled lives. That's coming from her, those words. And I can absolutely see that stepping through that interview with her. She's not only, the proud owner of DanceArts, which was initially the Jane Grech Dance Centre with over 900 students, and she intentionally downsized. We talk about that in the podcast, which is, total flip side to what most studio owners are looking to do, but she intentionally downsized because she really goes deep into her living a life by design philosophy. Look, we're going to dive into all of that in this chat. Let me bring you the amazing Jane Grech. Hey there, I'm Josephine Lancuba, and you're listening to Business, Arts and All That Jazz. I've been immersed in the creative business world and performing arts industry for over 20 years. I know from experience that being an artist, a creative, or running a creative business can be a tough gig, but I'm here to tell you it's possible. I went from having $0 to my name and living below the poverty line, to then living paycheck to paycheck, to finally living a life of comfort, happiness, passion, and even stability. In this podcast, I peel back the curtain and share with you the ups and downs of my journey. Plus, I tap into the minds of creative industry experts to discover their paths to success. I know you have a spark inside of you, that little voice that tells you to reach for the stars. I want to help you step into your limelight, to have the courage to live a life you dream of, a life that you design. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk business, arts, and all that jazz. Hello and welcome, the gorgeous Jane Grech. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Hi, Jo. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Now, look, I feel like I've actually known you forever, which is really weird because we've only really connected through social media, but you've created such an amazing Facebook group and platform, which is the collective for dance studio owners. So it's almost like I know you really well.
That's the magic of it. Yeah, that's the magic of it. Yeah. Oh, look, and that I don't love social media as a rule, but I love that side of it. I love that, particularly for introverts, it's a great way to connect with like-minded people and then build relationships from there. And then things like this, having conversations like this, or when you get to meet in real life, whenever that will be, it's really easy then, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you have multiple businesses. Looking here, you've got your dance studio, DanceArts in South Australia. Actually, I believe you guys were recently in lockdown. Is that correct?
We were probably around about 8 weeks ago now. So we're kind of as normal as things can be. We've still got restrictions and things like that. But look, South Australia has been pretty lucky. It has impacted us, obviously, both emotionally and financially. No business has been able to avoid that. But we're very thankful for what we have been able to achieve.
And you recently were able to actually pull off a concert in the theatre.
We did. I know, like a real live theatre. Yeah. Again, wasn't without its compromises and things like that. But it came 2 days before World Gratitude Day, and I can't tell you how grateful we were. Yeah. I think for dance studio owners, being able to get your kids, your students on the stage, like that's their grand final, really. I don't run a competition school, so performance opportunities are a little more limited, and it was very emotional for me, Jo. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I was very tense in the lead up to it because the year prior, our performance got pulled out from underneath us 4 days before we were due to hit the stage. So this year I was like, all right, come on.
And you're so on the home stretch.
Because I know how close you can get. Yes. And when the curtain went down at the end, I was like, yeah, good. Okay, I'll breathe again now. But it was
and you were very candid about being emotional. Actually, I saw that within your group, your Facebook group, that you did, share that you shed a tear. What made you want to be so vulnerable in front of a public audience in relation to that? What was your
That's a nice question. That's never really something that I have a thought process about, actually. It's never, I've always tried to live my truth. I know vulnerability, perhaps as a word, is very buzz. Thank you, Brene. And I adore her, and I've done her Dare to Lead course, Brene Brown, for those of who are following on, and being your authentic self. For me, I can't be bothered being anything but me. I'm getting a little bit older now, and I'm certainly not old, but there is something about, as you grow into yourself, you just give less shits about what other people think. Totally. And it's wonderful. And so for me, I never overthink things. What I'm sharing with my audience, both in my group, with my clients, with my customers at the studio, I'm always professional. But if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed about whatever's happening, with my staff as well, I will say that. And I think, research shows, and definitely trial and error shows, that when you are true to yourself, people really resonate with that, or they don't. And that's fine. We're not for everybody. And some people might watch the way I do business or the way I am and go, well, she's not for me. And that's okay, because they're probably not for me either.
Exactly. Look, if we take it right back to the beginning, what started your love affair with dance?
Yeah, I was born into dance, so I don't really feel like I had a choice. My mother was a dancer. She was my first dance teacher. I don't actually remember ever not dancing, apart from a very small time when I was in Melbourne and I just finished doing my qualification to be a dance teacher, and I'd been kind of lured into a corporate role in Melbourne, and for about 9 months I didn't dance, and it was the worst 9 months of my life. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, that's fine. But it was a really important time for me to realize that was part of who I am, and it wasn't really something I was prepared to give up. And so I just feel like I've always danced, as probably before I could walk, and it's very emotional for me, and spiritual, actually, without sounding too woo-woo. It is definitely part of a very deep part of me. It's not something separate. It's not just something that I do. It's definitely part of who I am. And I feel really grateful for that. I know lots of people don't have that, and I've had that all my life. So how lucky am I?
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't sound too woo-woo to me at all, so don't worry.
We love a bit of woo-woo, don't we?
You've got to have a little bit of woo-woo. Absolutely.
Us creative types.
Absolutely. Look, from what I've read, you actually have run multiple studios. I think I saw somewhere once that you had over 800 students at one time.
Yeah, we did.
But you made that decision to downsize.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that, because, as studio owners know, they're always trying to grow, right? So we're always looking for more students, grow. That's what we're told to do. And you've actually gone and done the opposite of that.
I have.
So what led you to that decision?
Oh, gosh, there's so much there that I can share with you. So the first part of that is, yes, we had up to 8 studios at one time. Not only that, my children were very little. So this is my 15th year of being a dance studio owner. I've been a teacher for much longer than that. My oldest child is 15, right? So about 8 years ago, I had an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And my studio was massive, over 900 students, 8 branches. Basically what everybody thought was living the dream.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly unhappy, but what I had realized is that I drifted from my values. and I'm a very values-driven person, and it can happen very easily. You just kind of get caught up in this growth. And Jo, it was ego. It was proving to myself, I think, that I could do it. I'd always wanted to be a dance studio owner, and I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I'm going to run the biggest dance studio in Adelaide, and I can't tell you why I thought that, apart from ego, or that I was trying to prove to others that I could do it. And so I did it, and that was fine.
Yeah.
Right? It was fine. yeah, exactly. And I ticked that box, but then I was like, okay, well, I've got young children. All of a sudden, my work is much more about managing people, which is okay as well. I love leadership. It's completely an area I've grown into, but that's not what I signed up for. I signed up because I wanted to run a business that was impacting lives, yes, but also living a life by design and not having anything to look back on and regret.
Yeah.
So at that time, I really made a decision to, and I don't even know if this is a term, but I call it descale, like your coffee machine, right? I descaled, and I did it very slowly because I didn't want to hemorrhage. I just wanted to kind of shave bits off a little bit at a time. So I just kind of closed the worst performing branch, and I grandfathered it out like that, and really, really focused on my niche, which instead of, trying to be everything to everyone and kind of working in a really broad way, I narrowed in on that in two areas, and that was preschool, which we do very, very well. I've got a lot of experience in, but certainly as my oldest students have grown, I've narrowed in on the teenagers, and that is definitely where I do my work. I don't teach preschool anymore. Yeah. I did for 15 years. I've always got that, and I loved it, but that's not my area of expertise anymore. Now the work I do is with my teenagers and creating a place for them where they can really belong. And when I mean belong, I don't mean just like fitting in, but actually being there, who they are, trying to encourage them earlier in life, the advantages of being their authentic self. So that's a really long answer, I know, but I guess it just, I've always tried to reject the hustle kind of mentality because it's not aligned with my values, and I got sucked in. I did. And bigger is not always better, huh?
Yeah. How many studios do you have now? So you went from 8 and then
so I would say we've got 1.5, and at the end of this year, it's taken 8 years. We're going to trim off that last little one. It's just a satellite studio at the moment, and we'll just have our headquarters where we've got 3 studios on site, and we've brought it down to around about 400 students, which for me is perfect. Absolutely perfect. And it's trial and error, because what works for me is not necessarily going to work for other people, but I have worked out that that's a brilliant amount of students to run a profitable business, not have a huge teaching staff to manage. I've got 4 in my leadership team, of which I am one, and I manage my studio on Fridays effectively. That's what I do. I go in every Friday, and don't know whether you can hear that, but my small dog has decided to join the podcast. That's what he does. We're just going to grin through it because it's bin day, and so I do that on Fridays, and it's working brilliantly for me because I get to do this kind of thing with people like you on Wednesdays.
Amazing. Now you show up in a big way. Obviously, we've talked about the Facebook group. We've talked about you've got your student teacher program as well. You've got your dance studio. You're also a coach for industry dance studio owners. So, there's a lot going on there. How do you motivate yourself to show up? How do you get through that? Because showing up in all of these different ways can, be a lot. How do you manage that?
Look, I am an introvert, and people, when they hear that, because I also run, and I haven't because of the C word, but I also run Exchange, which is a conference for dance studio owners by dance studio owners. And that day is very much an extroverted day for me, where I show up and then kind of have to be like, oh, that was a lot for a couple of days after. I think the thing for me is just being aware that of who I am. Again, going back to knowing yourself, self-awareness, and going, well, if I'm going to show up, I need to put some boundaries around that to protect me, which I think is an area that we fall down in as business owners a lot. And it's what I coach about a lot, what boundaries you have in place to protect you.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging that I am an introvert, which means when I do a lot of, humaning, that I take some time out. Even we mentioned my performance over the weekend, 2 full-on days, with humans. And
I love that.
which I loved. If you were watching, it looked like I had a good time, because I did. But on Monday, I put a line through it. It's in my diary. And, even my best friend was like, hey, do you want to catch up on Monday? I was like, no, I can't do any peopling on Monday. So I just know that. And we get to do that. We are not working for other people. We don't have to follow the other, the social norms or rules about a 9 to 5 and things like that. I think really it's about designing your life to suit your needs so that you can enjoy it. Yeah. I have a lot going on, Jo, but I do not work full time.
That's amazing.
I really have a lot of downtime. Like, people look at me and like, oh, wow, you must be so busy. And I'm like, I muck around a lot.
How many hours a week would you work? How many days a week are you working then?
Look, I'll work a little bit each day. But today I'm doing this with you. I've done some emails and I've been to the gym, and later I'll go and get my kids. So it's not a big day. It's not a big day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And some days are bigger than others, but I get to decide that. And the same with my coaching clients. I've got 9 private clients, dance studio owners that I coach on a monthly basis. Yeah. Perhaps I could have 20, but I don't want that anymore. I don't want to fall into that, having to work all the time, because, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, but one of my values is freedom, and the freedom to choose how I spend my time. And I've fallen into that, how I said I kind of fell into like that ego trap of growing a business as big as I could. Well, a couple of years ago, I realized I'd created myself a job. I was at the studio 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. in the office, Monday to Friday. Then I was teaching in the evenings. I was teaching all day Saturdays. And I was like, this is not working for me, So I just decided to change it. So we all have that power.
And I can super resonate with that, actually, because I actually do not teach anymore I've got my Musical Makers Club, and I don't teach anymore.
Yeah.
There's still work to be done. I mean, the team needs to be managed, and
they need a leader.
They need a leader. There needs to be scheduling and things, and obviously the creative side of it, creating special events and things for our students. So yeah, I don't teach anymore. No. I'm a cover. I'll do that. But that's it. And I love that. I actually love that. It takes so much pressure off, and it means that the wheels can keep churning whether I'm there or not, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. And, I mean, I do teach. I will put that. I am, but look, only 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
And
that comes back to the choice thing, right?
It comes back to the choice. You've got it. And that's what I was going to say. We need to be doing things that light us up. Life's too short otherwise. And, we need to look at what our strengths are as people and what we actually really enjoy doing, and do more of that.
Yeah. And boundaries, like you said, are so important. I mean, I now have, I used to always operate from my mobile phone. So my personal phone was my business phone. Yeah. And I changed that over 12 months ago.
And life's good. Life's good.
So good. And a couple of people still have my number.
Yeah, of course.
So, I'll get a couple of messages. Last night, though, I must admit, I haven't had this for a really long time, but I got a message at like 10 p.m. from a student, actually, a teenage student. And I responded to their question, but then I said, just so you know, I do not take messages from this phone between X time and X time. You need to email this person, and that's how this process works. But she was a bit anxious about something, so I was going to respond. Because of that.
And that's your choice then, isn't it?
But just having just setting boundaries is so important, especially with dance studio owners or anything that's related to programming where you have students, right? Because they can really take a lot out of you.
Oh, look, otherwise. And any business, I think, I think boundaries, everybody talks about balance all the time. And I've just about finished my book on this, which was much harder than I thought. But people talk about balance all the time. But I think if you go further, don't talk about balance, talk about boundaries. Because if you are trying to achieve any kind of work-life balance and you don't have boundaries in place, you are setting yourself up for a really bumpy ride. So reverse engineer that, put your boundaries in place first, and you'll find that things are automatically a little bit more balanced. And life's good again, and it changes all the time. Perhaps what used to not bother you in the past might start to bother you now. And so boundaries are flexible. You can change them as the needs of your family grow and evolve. When your children are little and at home, you don't want to be constantly on the phone. Perhaps for me now, I've got more flexibility. All my children are at school. I could make that choice. I don't like the phone, so I haven't changed that boundary. But, I can. Again, I really want to empower anyone who's listening as any kind of business owner that we get to call the shots on this. And I think sometimes we get stuck. We think we can't. And we can make our own rules. We can put in our own boundaries. We have the power to change and make this work for us. And that's why I get really kind of sad when people are like, oh, this is all so hard. I'm like, change it. Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about you being comfortable with being vulnerable, with showing your true self in public. I mean, what sort of leader are you? What's your leadership style?
I would say if I had to choose a style, that I'm a servant leader. I always like to show the way, be there to serve my people. That's my job as a leader. But I don't know whether I would say I have a certain style as opposed to just really showing up as myself and being someone who honors their strengths. So I will always be talking to my people about their strengths and saying, to get the best from you, let's have a look at actually who you are. So I'm very much the same kind of leader as I am teacher, as I am parent, and as I am, I'd like to think, as human. I'm holistic. I'm interested in the person. People always come first to me. And I think if you get that right, you're always going to get the best out of everyone. But not only that, you're going to get the best for them. It's not about me, really. As a leader, what I'm trying to do is create an opportunity for my teachers and my staff and faculty to get the most out of it for them. Same for my students. It's actually about them as a whole person. And of course, for my kids. So I've always felt like those three things are pretty well the same. Obviously, the language is different. I'm not going to address them all in the same way, but the outcome is the same. And that is to tap into the unique and wonderful, special person that each and everybody is, and be a support to them, but not particularly tell them what to do, but certainly guide them in the right direction and maybe re-guide them a couple of times as well. In saying that, Jo, I'm pretty tough. So I do have a little bit of a reputation as being the smiling assassin.
Wow. And okay. Yes, I wouldn't have thought that.
Oh, yes. So I am sweet, but I have very high expectations of myself, and I have very high expectations of others. But I'm not backwards in coming forwards about that. I will always let people know, it's important to me that people have clarity around that. So there is no grey areas in my leadership. It's very black and white. People know what is expected of them and they know how well they're doing. And again, that is the same in my classes as a teacher. My students know what's expected of them and they know whether they are reaching those expectations, and the same with my faculty. And I think that is kind, actually. I really feel like that's the way to go, because there's no surprises then. So yes, I do look very sweet, but I don't, I'm not shy of conflict. I don't love it, but I will have it. I will have it with you.
What do you think makes a great leader? What is it, that secret sauce to being, you know, a really good, strong leader where people actually will, you know, be influenced by you?
Look, I think you have to be courageous. Leadership is the hardest role I do, because we're dealing with humans, and there's no one size fits all. You know, we have systems in my businesses for absolutely everything, and it's a copy and paste. You know, quite often a system I use in my student teacher education program can be copied and pasted into my studio with a few words changed, but humans aren't like that. You can have the basis of a system, but you have to be able to be flexible enough to change the way you relate to different people. And that's what's hard about leadership. That's what's hard about being a teacher. It's what's hard about being a parent. You know, I know you've got a couple of children too, and I'm betting that although they're both, you know, gorgeous, that they're different.
Yes.
And right. And same with my three. You can definitely tell they're Gretches. They're very much related, but their personalities are really, really different. So the way I parent them, although there is some consistency there, you know, my expectations of them are very, very similar at different, you know, their different stages and ages. I have to be able to flex with their personality. And that's for me is why leadership can be quite tiring, because you just reckon you might have got it right with somebody, and then a new human comes along and you're like, oh, well, that worked with, you know, the last person in this role. But here I am. So it's this constant learning. And I really do feel like leaders must be humble, because leadership is about others. It's not about trying to big note yourself. For me, it's always about others. And I think that humility is important if you want people to trust you, because otherwise they're going to just think you're a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll just have to put this episode as explicit now. Thanks, Jane. No, that's fine.
Sorry. So it's pretty like low level explicit, but yes, true.
Yeah, for sure. Look, with so many, you know, balls in the air, obviously, what do you think your biggest challenge is?
My biggest challenge. That's a very good question. Let me think about it so I don't just give you a stock answer. Probably just, well, I've got a couple, but my biggest one is probably just showing up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like, is this valuable? I don't want to say imposter syndrome, because I don't think it's that. I think it's just a healthy dose of self-criticism.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want to say, oh, I doubt myself and this, because some days I do. But I don't feel like that's entirely bad, but it is a challenge. It does show up, and it shows up differently at different times of the month.
Yeah. And there's some days where you feel like you're an absolute rock star, I'm sure. You know, like we all have those days. You've got your good days, your bad days, your days where you have that self-doubt, like you said. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think on those days, the challenge then is about being compassionate with yourself and just saying that's okay. You don't have to be that rock star today. You can question yourself. Obviously, if those days go on too long and it stops you from showing up, well, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But it doesn't for me. So what I do is when things are feeling fantastic and I'm feeling confident, I will rock out so much work. You know, I will just hit it. And so then it's automated for those times that I'm feeling less than amazing. You know, so that probably would be my biggest challenge. And then, to be super honest with you, sometimes my challenge is, and this is very funny because I used to be a workaholic, but sometimes my challenge is to just get motivated. I want to do all the things like everybody else, but sometimes I really just also want to read a book or just live, you know, be a bit leisurely. And so that's always been a bit of a conflict for me. Certainly since having
this.
It's my all the things.
So
I don't want to do. I don't want to do all the things anymore. I used to want to do all the things. I'm very much more chilled than I used to be. I used to be like, I want to do all the things. I want to do it now. So I'm going to, and I did. And I was very busy. And I wasn't unhappy. But now, you know, if I want to take the day off, I don't have to rearrange everything. I don't have to make the world spin the other way. I can cross it out in my diary. I can get onto my Calendly and say unavailable.
I love
happy
that.
days.
I love
happy days.
That's interesting. I mean, I've recently sort of had that same thought where, you know, I don't have to do all the things. And actually, I started feeling a little bit guilty during lockdown. Obviously, in Sydney, we've been locked down forever. And we've gone virtual with all of our programs. And there were days where, because I don't teach, you see, I felt like I had nothing to do. And I was like, there's always stuff to do, don't get me wrong. But there were days where I was like, my team are running all of the programs online, everything's sorted. I've got an office assistant working from home. She's doing all the things. And I was like, I feel like I'm not doing anything anymore. And that was really hard because I was like, I'm in love with that because I've been working all these years to create that. And now that it's arrived, I actually had a moment of guilt. I'm like, oh no, should I be doing something, you know?
And maybe that stems from, and I can relate, I can 100% relate from, you know, when we're really passionate about the work that we do put a large amount of our identity into it. And I am guilty of that. And so therefore, when we're not defining ourselves by our productivity or how busy we are or how successful our business is, then what is left? And it can be really uncomfortable. We're like, oh, I don't know what's left. And it's a lot. And I still, you know, have days where I feel a little bit guilty sometimes if I perhaps not being as productive as I know I can be. But then other days I'm quite compassionate about it.
So what do you do when you do have those days where you're feeling that guilt? What do you do to overcome that guilt?
Generally have a nap.
Love it. Beautiful.
You know, like, I think that's the thing is I feel like I never want to have any kind of regret. I never want to look back and think, oh, I regretted, you know, something. And so if I am feeling a little bit guilty, I go, well, what's that about? Just generally, guilt is about not being aligned with your values. Sorry, again, I'm not like getting paid for every time I say the word values. And so if I'm feeling guilty, I'm not working hard enough, I go, well, what's that about?
So questioning it, I like that.
What's that about? And giving yourself grace. Give yourself some grace. We're here for a good time, you know, as well as to make an impact. I don't want to undersell myself. Everything I do with intent, and I'm really serious about it. You know, my mission is to educate, encourage, and empower everyone I serve, whether that's my faculty, my own students, my own offspring, all of my DanceStep partners, right? I'm serious about it, but I also want to have a life. I'm serious about that as well. And if that means saying, log off, you know, you've got a headache, you're not feeling it, you don't have any appointments this afternoon, log off, have a half an hour nap on the couch before going and picking up the kids from school, then do it.
Yeah, for sure. You just mentioned actually, you do a lot of work with your brand Dance Studio Success. Is that your DanceStep? Is that the same thing? How does that work?
Oh, well,
what is that?
Yes. Well, Dance Studio Success was actually created in 2014 as a blog. When we blogged, we did such a thing as blogging.
Yeah.
And I like to write. And so I just started writing. And so that's really what that is. And it's, I guess, the umbrella company for the kind of work that I do with dance studio owners.
Yes.
I've got my private clients now, so that's under that company. DanceStep is actually trademarked as its own company, and it stands for Dance Student Teacher Education Program. So there's lots of different.
Clever, by the way.
I reckon, and this is kind of going back to allowing yourself grace, that I came up with that on the beach. Brian and I have a lovely little beach house here in South Australia.
Yep.
And all of my best work is done walking along that beach, either with him or by myself, because, it really allows me to rest my brain. And so I'm pretty sure that acronym was created on the beach at Port Hughes, but certainly the model of that business was created there. I remember it like it was yesterday, walking with Brian and saying, I've had this idea. This is what I'm thinking. And he's always very like, okay. Do you have, I guess, the capacity on that? Every time I take something on, I also give something away. It's why I only work, my studio runs beautifully, and I go in there from 9:15 to 2:15 on a Friday to work with my team, so it's not like I am back to doing all the things. I'm not. So if I create something, and I'm in the process of doing that now with the book, and I acknowledge that that's going to take a whole lot of time once it's finished. So something else is going to have to go.
So this DanceStep program is about empowering, young people within the studio to become the leaders and teachers as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you employ your own DanceStep kids, or how does that work in your studio?
Some I do eventually. And DanceStep is certainly not like a teacher training program. It is very much like a student teacher, how to be a good student teacher. So for me, leadership, leading others is where I really get excited. But my mission has always been to impact young people through dance. And I do that in my dance studio, but my mission is greater than that. And that's partly why DanceStep exists. So our hashtags are growing leaders and empowering students, because the sad reality is that in girls, confidence peaks at 8 years old, and that crushed me, and so we need cheerleaders for our girls. And what better place than a dance studio, right? Because we have that really trusting relationship. It's a place, hopefully, where students feel like they can belong. And so over time, they do my program. And if they come through, at the moment, it's got four levels, and show that they are still interested, because it's a little bit of a funnel. Everybody wants to be a dance teacher when they're in a dance studio, until they find out the reality, perhaps, and go, oh, I don't know. No. I don't want to do all of that. The advantage of having a student teacher program in your studio is that it does give that behind the scenes glimpse into what it's like to be a dance teacher. And a lot of the student leaders that I talk to are like, oh, there is much more to this job than perhaps I first thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just turning up at 4 p.m. But the big part is that if you do eventually employ students to become teachers, and you train and you mentor them, the big advantage with that process is that you have 100% the correct cultural fit for your studio. And that, when people are 100% aligned with your vision and your philosophy and your values, then life is so much easier. But not only is it easier, it's more powerful, isn't it? Because you can really tap in to what's special about your business, about your studio. I love talking about culture. It really gets me excited, because it's almost like, well, it's the personality of your business. And I love, go back to that question about leadership. I love tapping into what's special about each person. And so therefore you get to kind of do that for your business as well, because you there are copycats, right?
Yeah.
We've all experienced that.
Yeah.
People can copy you. That's fine. And they do, and they will. And if they haven't, then they will, right? People will copy you, and it's super frustrating. But nobody can do you quite like you can do you. And that's the advantage of culture. And so if you can really grow teachers right from the beginning, your students are at your studio because they are already aligned with the way you do things. And that's only ever going to get stronger and better. So there's so many advantages of growing your own teachers. That said, I've had teachers come from other places that have really brought so much value as well.
Yeah.
So
that sort of really leads me into that next question, I suppose. I was going to ask you, and you speak of culture, what's your secret to finding a great team?
I think your team just must believe in your vision and your values and your philosophy. So, we talked about how I niched the studio, and through that, and this actually came back right from that work I was doing 20 years ago in a corporate setting, where I really did learn the value of organizational culture, is that you recruit your teachers to fit with the values of your business and not the other way around, and go, okay, well, you're a really good technical jazz teacher or whatever it is, and that's what we need, but you're not aligned to our culture. That's all right. We'll deal with that. It's not all right. It's going to end up in conflict. It's going to end up in difficult conversations.
Yes.
All of us want to avoid, and it's just going to be hard work. And so business should be fun. Not always, obviously. Let's be real. It's not utopia, but it should be fun and it should be easy. And so if you do the hard work in recruiting, so you work really hard to make sure that your team is aligned with your vision and your values and your purpose, then the rest is going to be easier. And that, to me, is the secret sauce of a fantastic team. My studio won the best team culture in the What's On for Kids Awards this year. And there was a bit of pressure around that, actually, because everybody was like, oh, you've got that in the bag. And I said to Brian, my husband, shit, what if we lose? So we were really relieved. But the team itself wasn't surprised. They were like, oh, yeah, well, we're an awesome team. Yep, good. But there's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I've experienced, obviously, having managed teams for a few years now, I've experienced the toxicity that spreads like wildfire when you haven't got the culture right.
Yeah.
And I've worked really hard on cultivating a beautiful culture, which we have now, but it does take intentional work. I don't think it just happens.
No. Everything's intentional. Anything that's of value is intentional. And, I've made mistakes, and I will in the future in hiring. The big thing where I have let myself down, or our team has let itself down, is when we hire out of desperation. We're just like, yep, you'll do. And it's always a bad idea. Always. But that's how you learn, isn't it? And so now we're like, okay, we never hire out of desperation. We try and be a lot more strategic about it. But everything, like I said, intention is everywhere in our business. There's strategy that is behind everything. Nothing is accidental anymore. But that has come through being in 15 years of business and 15 years of trial and error, and allowing yourself that grace. You may have heard me talk about flirting, which is failure and learning. So flirting, and we just that's what we do. We just keep flirting, and we just try not to make the same mistakes twice.
Have you guys, just shifting that conversation, I suppose, have you guys gone into the virtual world with your studio? Is that something you've done? Because obviously it's harder to maintain, it's possible, but maintaining culture through a Zoom screen and lifting the morale of team. And I know, regardless of location, you have still had your lockdown moments. Did you guys go into the virtual space with your studio and your students?
Yeah, we did. We did have some online classes, and in a way, that actually strengthened our culture. And what I found through facing different challenges and times of adversity is that is when your culture shows up or it lets you down. And so use every opportunity to build your culture. And even though I guess during that time it was very unsettling, we were all doing things we didn't sign up for, we made sure that we were honouring our culture. You know, we had so many different kind of behind the scenes systems in place that showed our teachers that we had their backs, that we were supporting them, that we valued and appreciated them. So in those times of challenge, step up and lead, and you'll realise that those are the times that define your team. Because when you get through that together, you go, oh my goodness, now we're stronger. And even like the production on the weekend, you know, not that it was a particular challenge, but there was hard work involved and some long hours. And we get that as a group, you know, we get through that as a group. And at the end, when you're all standing in a circle going, well done, well, of course, now you're stronger as a team. And the funniest part is, Jo, corporate businesses, they take their teams off for retreats, you know, team building retreats where I don't even know what they do, but climb walls and do this, that, and the other so that they can strengthen their team. Well, we have that inbuilt, I think. We have that inbuilt if we can take advantage of those opportunities. So I always feel like my team connectivity is much higher after a challenge, after an adversity. But you've got to, again, be intentional about bringing awareness to that, you know, and being authentic and vulnerable and saying, hey, guys, this is hard. I know you didn't sign up to be an online teacher, but at the same time, at least it means our businesses could keep going. But that's not the time to let your team, you know, float off and be an absent leader. That's the challenge of leadership. When it's hard and you're tired and you're perhaps doubting yourself and you might be stepping into fear, that's when your people need you more than ever. And so you have to just go, oh, I'm the leader. Okay, they're looking to me. Yeah. Here we go. That's the challenge of leadership.
Now, I noticed, just in a little change of pace here, I noticed that you recently did a major brand shift. It might have been over a year ago or whatever, but you went from the Jane Grech dance, what was it?
Centre? Yeah.
Centre, that's it. Jane Grech Dance Centre, that's it, got it. To DanceArts. Now, this is a completely new look and feel and branding position, it looks like to me. Why did you do that? Like that, you know, you've had that reputation for so many years and you've completely shifted and removed your name from the brand. I thought that was a really interesting move. What was the thought process behind that?
I basically was a little bit bored of myself. I just thought it's time for Jane Grech to go, you know. There is some truth to that. But the main thought process behind it was that when I started the business, I didn't have this 20-year vision for my business. I started it the same time I had my first baby. It was very much a small studio here in the suburbs of the northeast of Adelaide. I was quite happy with the name, Jane Grech Dance Centre, all good. But over the last 15 years, obviously it's morphed, it's grown into a huge thing. We've scaled it back down to a more manageable size. But mostly the name wasn't representative of what was actually happening, and that was that I'm not really that involved, apart from being the vision maker. You know, on an organisational level, I'm not in there making all of the little decisions and things like that. I create the vision and I lead my team and I teach 5 hours a week. So really it's not the Jane Grech Dance Centre anymore. It needed to honour the work that the rest of my team were doing. And so that's why we had the rebrand to DanceArts. Arts being very intentional. I believe dance is an art. Because it is creative and it is a way to express ourselves. So I wanted to show that that's part of my philosophy. And the rebrand was super fun, you know, but definitely the philosophy behind the studio is still the same. Our tagline was sharing the love of dance, and it's now we move your heart, you know, so it's very much based from the heart, you know. It's very much about sharing the love that we have for the art form, as well as impacting other people, our students, and moving their heart. So
I mean, from an outsider looking in, I feel like it's a more modern approach for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And look, businesses need to innovate. They, you know, all businesses should undergo some rebranding, whether it's like a complete overhaul like mine or just a tweak. You have to stay with the times. You need to change and innovate. And those businesses that don't, that get stuck with, oh, that's the way we've always done it, so that's the way we're always going to do it, will die. Those businesses will die. Mm-hmm. This is a legacy. You know, I don't know whether I'll sell my studio one day. It's likely that I will. But this is a legacy. I want it to remain, you know, whether it's my son running it or somebody else has bought it, I want it to remain long after I'm no longer running.
It'll be easier to sell as DanceArts than Jane Grech.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a lot of people asked me about that. They were like, "Oh, we know what you're doing. You're selling." And I said, "No, I'm not actually. But what I'm doing is just honouring the fact that things have changed from 15 years ago. You know, when I had Alana, who's now 15, I'm parenting her differently to when she was a newborn. That's what happened. So now I'm running my business in a different way than I did 15 years ago. And to me, that's really exciting.
That's the power of having your own business and creating your own life, isn't it?
That's the exciting part. Yeah, that's the exciting part. You're never bored. And when you do get bored, and I have been bored, then you get to change it. You go, oh, well, I'm settling into my comfort zone here. And that's okay for a while. But then I'm like, oh, I'm bored. So let's, you know, ruffle some feathers. And that's, let me tell you, rebranding ruffled some feathers.
Oh, yeah. So tell me, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Probably, well, definitely my oldest daughter. I mean, all my children, because I'm a mum, right? So, of course, you just think your children are wonderful. They inspire me to try and be the best me I can be, because I know they're watching. And so I do actually always try and be my very best self for them. And so through that kind of, I know it's a reverse inspiration, but that they're very much my inspiration every day. I want to show them what's possible, particularly my girls. I want to show them that you can be a mum, that you can run a really successful business, that you can have time for yourself. I want to show them all of that. And I want to inspire them, and through that they inspire me. Other than that, I would probably say my mum and dad. I'm very homey, really, and to me, family is everything. My dad is an amazing man. He's always worked for other people. He's but very much mission-based businesses. And my mum, who, as you might remember, right from the beginning of my story, was my first dance teacher, rebranded herself, for want of a better word, at 60, retrained to become a Pilates practitioner, runs her own business, now runs her own very successful Pilates studio. So how cool is that?
That is so amazing, because, you know, being at that age and actually just going for it and starting something fresh, I admire that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely brave, and really, really inspiring. Beyond that, let's also put in Michelle Obama in there, because if we want, you know, if we really want to look high, she's the gold star, right?
Okay, what's next for Jane? I ask this to all of my guests. What's next?
For me, I don't have huge plans. I really am enjoying doing what I'm doing. I enjoy having the freedom to choose. You know, I want to keep my dance studio. I want to keep impacting the kids in my community like that. I want to keep doing my leadership work. DanceStep is growing from strength to strength. So that's where my focus, you know, if I'm honest, that's where I spend most of my time, and I'm writing content for that. Beyond that, I don't have huge kind of visions.
You're releasing a book.
Yes, I'm in the process of finally giving birth to that. It's one of the hardest things I've done, because, you know, when you mentioned challenges before, I was like, how honest should I be? So there's been a lot of kind of self-talk about that, you know, about going, oh, no, come on, show up as your real self and be honest. And so I have felt very vulnerable about that. And, you know, I look forward to sharing that next year when it's due out, and hopefully getting my exchange conference back, and just kind of following the wind a little bit for a couple of years. You know, I know that sounds very vague, but again, my kids are 15 to my youngest is 10. And so it's very much about being present for them. And once I've got them to a little bit older, then I can indulge, you know, in different whims. I'd love to travel, to be honest, but, you know, here we are. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if people want to find out where they can learn more about you, where's the best place for them to be directed? Where can they find out about Jane?
Yeah. dancestudiossuccess.com.au is that blog that I mentioned before, but otherwise on Instagram at Dance Studio Success, or on Facebook, Dance Studio Success with Jane Grech. I'd love to connect with them. Both of those channels are very much focused on the DanceStep program, but that's how you get to me. I would love to connect.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you know what? Thank you so much. I have to say, it's so funny because I'm really excited to be interviewing you today. And, you know, you talk about imposter syndrome. I initially was nervous to even ask you to come on to this show. Can you believe it? And now I'm just like, oh, Jo's so silly.
No, I love to chat, and I'm very humbled that you asked me. And it's, you know, it's lovely to be able to have these kind of conversations. We're so lucky that we can, and all get to know each other a little bit better, and hopefully support each other in that way.
Hey, I love that. I love that so much. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I am so excited that you were here, and I can't wait to see more from you. And I also will definitely be getting a copy of that book. Make sure you share that with us once it's out.
I'll be
How
sharing.
long until it's out?
I'll be oversharing. I'm not going to tell you that.
Okay. Right. Still in the creative process. No problem. All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Jo.
If you enjoyed listening and would like to hear more, be sure to click subscribe. If you're really feeling the love, share us with your friends. To work with me, or to simply find out more about the magic of creativity, arts and business, head to my website josephinelancuba.com, and you can find me on socials. I also have a book that I've co-written with a bunch of amazing entrepreneurial women called The Women Changing the World. And you can grab a copy of that at josephinelancuba.com/books. Thanks for listening.